I put together a correlation of just things from one workshop and another workshop, and it made some very interesting questions appear for me. There was the mention of physical experience in Samuel Adams, and then these people being here now, and that would seem like the gap of 200 years in physical time. And I realized that non-physical doesn't experience time, or I accept that, and it makes sense to me.
We experience time. You're the leading edge of that which we are, and you have time, so we do too.
Okay, so 200 years seems like 200 years to you too.
When we look through your eyes.
Right, okay, thank you. So anyway, what do we do during that time? Do we get to ask questions? Do we keep on learning?
Well, do not assume that the only gaze that you have is from one lifetime to another. In other words, you are eternal. That would be like saying, I am in this body and I am a man, therefore I am a father, therefore I am a golf pro, therefore I can balance my checkbook, and I am a brother, and right now I'm playing golf, therefore I cannot think about the other things that make up the continuity of who I am. And we say, as this non-physical consciousness, you are more agile with your non-physical thoughts than you are with your physical thoughts. The multidimensionality of your beingness from non-physical is unfathomable from your physical standpoint. And we know it is really unsatisfying when someone like us says, well, you just have to take our word for it, or you just have to take our feeling for it. But non-physical is infinite intelligence and omnipresent and can focus anywhere it wants to any time. And when you get that, then you don't apply the limitations that you feel in your physical format to non-physical. And that dream, that vision that you had just now about the unlimitedness of your being is just a beginning step of the unlimitedness that you really feel as non-physical energy. You just took a glimpse into what it's like for non-physical. The story that she's referring to was Jerry and Esther and Tracy arriving in Boston and us playing with them. Let us give you more background on this. Jerry and Esther were very new to this kind of thinking, and when they began, the people who surrounded them mostly in the workshops were of a metaphysical bent, which was very foreign to Jerry and Esther. They did not have thoughts about that, and they wanted to talk about past lives, and Jerry and Esther had never heard of such a thing and weren't all that interested in it. And when they began asking us about it, we were not encouraging conversation about past lives, because we wanted them to focus where they are in the here and now. We want them to be who they are now and allow the fullness of that which they have become to flow through them here and now. So we didn't play with them about that at all. And they, as were many of the people in the various audiences, were beginning to feel very linear. They were saying things like, well, I now accept, and it was a hard jump for them, especially for Esther, I accept that I have lived more than one physical lifetime. But then she began saying things like, well, that couldn't have been us because that person was alive when that person was alive. So we couldn't have been that person and that person, because her thinking was, somebody has to croak before they can be born again. And so, because they were beginning to go down the wrong track on understanding consciousness and the way it expresses itself, we said to them, you're going to like Boston. It was the last place of physical for you, which got Esther's attention. She said to Jerry and to Tracy, I was in Boston last. And then we said, all of you. And she said, all of us. And now they're in the limousine on the way to the hotel, and they are saying, who was I? Who was I? Who was I? Who was I? And we said, when you stand before the statue that is you, you will know. And they said, statues, we have statues. We were famous. And so they dropped off their bags. It's 1:00 in the morning, and they are running all over Boston, standing in front of statues.
I can picture it.
Hoping for the best. And when they stood before the statue of the renegade named Samuel Adams, troublemaker that he was, all three of them shouted, I was Samuel Adams. And then they looked at each other, not you, me. And then we explained that the energy that is within them was at that time within Samuel Adams. It was the first time that they began thinking in terms of energy stream rather than a clump of non-physical and a clump of flesh. it broke them loose into understanding that infinite intelligence and consciousness is a stream of consciousness. And for physical beings who have come to like your clump and take ownership of your clump, and some of you have done such a good job of that you've decided you're going to take your clump into the non-physical with you, which we think is interesting. We tease you, what are you going to do with a body in a non-physical realm? It's going to be cumbersome. It helped them to begin understanding that they are eternal beings. It's not very satisfying to query about the non-physical from your physical format, because you don't have broad enough perception to really get it. There's no way of proving it. Esther said to Jerry, and Jerry to Esther, we can't even prove who Abraham is. We can't assign them to a star or to a galaxy. We have no way of proving. We only know how they feel.
Well, I was just surprised. For instance, I felt that I sort of came back right away. I mean, I just got that feeling, and so I thought, gee, there could be like a 200-year gap.
Oh, but you have to understand, and we are appreciating you bringing this up. As we're calling you forward, you can only hear what we say through the lens that you are listening. In other words, as we said to Esther, Boston was your place of physical. She interpreted it because we had not been willing to talk to them at all about past lives. And now we're talking to her about a past life. So she knew that it had to be something really meaningful. There are many of you who are the same energy as those who were the founders of your nation. That's why you take such ownership, and it's why you take such issue when you think that it's going off in a direction that does not please you. In other words, you are eternal beings who have been playing in this physical realm for a very long time. You're not new to this. The people that you come forth with in clusters as you inhabit this earth in the way that you do, you are soulmates with all of them on some level. In other words, this is non-physical consciousness playing together. It is astonishing to us that you do not love one another in the way you did when you made the decision to come forth. As non-physical energies getting ready to come forth into these bodies, you had unequivocal love for every person on the planet, and you came forth in an attitude of joining them and rejoicing and reveling in physical life. Look at the babies. That's still how they feel. They will love you no matter who you are or no matter where you live, until they've been trained by their environment that they should not be that way. Jerry and Esther a few years ago were at an airport, and their general process was they would land, Jerry would go out and retrieve the car, which took some time, and Esther would wait at the baggage carousel for bags. And then Jerry would arrive just at the right moment, and the skycap would help Esther to the curb, and off they would go with the big heavy bags. So Esther is standing and waiting, and a very nice man is waiting with her, and she is playing with this man. She is teasing him, telling him that her bags would be the first 3 bags off the carousel. They always are, she said. And he said, no, my bags will be the first 3 bags off the carousel. They always are. And Esther said, well, that was before I was here. But now I am here. My bags will be the first 3 bags off. And he said, no, my bags will be the first 3 bags off. And then a big, beautiful bag came rolling off, the first one off. And he grabbed it and smiled and pulled it off and put it down. And Esther said, thank you very much. That's my bag. And he said, what? And he looked. Their bags were identical. They had 3 identical bags, and Esther's bags were the first 3 bags off. And because he did not know they were hers, he pulled every one of them off for her. And she thanked him profusely. They had a wonderful time. They did everything short of hugging each other. And then Jerry is watching from the doorway, waiting, and he said to Esther as she got into the car, do you know who that man was? And Esther said, no, he was very, very nice. And Jerry said, he is the television evangelist. He is the one that preaches fire and brimstone. He's the one that when you hear him, you yell, shut that off. Jerry said, it was interesting to watch you, because if either one of you knew who the other one was, you would not have been having such a good time together. And so what we're wanting you to understand is that if you could leave behind your self-imposed biases that you've picked up from your cultures as you separate yourselves in your fear, you would be these loving beings who are embracing one another as the fellow travelers that you are, you see. That's what it feels like from non-physical. And anything less than that will always feel off to every one of you.
I understand what you are saying about owning the way we feel about where we are, because I can remember as a teenager having someone tell me that we got to a certain point to where we didn't have to have a body anymore. We could just be energy. And I said, well, I can imagine that, but I don't want to do that. I want to come right back, because there are countries that I'm not going to get to see this time that I want to see. I want to go to Brazil. I want to go to South Africa.
But feel how you torture yourself with your feeling of limitation. And the person is right. You are energy and you are eternal. And sometimes Jerry and Esther will see a little one reveling in life, and they will just smile in anticipation of getting to do that again. And then sometimes Esther will feel fear, because she remembers her teenage years. Or she remembers that lag between knowing how wonderful she was and remembering life is supposed to be good again. And she is saying, I really don't want to have that experience. Can't I just remain? And we say, write more books and leave more breadcrumbs and tell more people. And the mass consciousness continues. It gets easier and easier and easier and easier and easier for you to connect up with that. This is an evolving time-space reality, and it gets better and better and better. It is not getting worse. It is getting better, you see. Nothing to worry about.
Well, speaking of evolution, can an amoeba aspire to become a human after sending out enough rockets of desire?
Yes, but fortunately, there will always be cells in your body. In other words, the question implies that it is more meaningful and more satisfying to be a full-blown human than a one-celled amoeba. And the thing that we really want you to feel is that the satisfaction of that life experience has to do with the alignment that is taking place. Years ago, Jerry asked the question, is the clam really all that happy? And we said, happier than most humans. Because the distance between what the clam wants and what the clam allows is a closed gap, where there are so many humans wanting so much more than they are allowing, and they are torturing themselves in the process, you see.
Well, the question came from this wonderful question and answer in the back of your latest book, and mentioned the fact that a pet that seems to be so close to you can be part of the same stream. Yes, and that made total sense to me, because I've had pets in the past that were like that, and I have several now. And so I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, could I decide to be someone's companion cat next time? Or, I wasn't sure, the way things flow and change.
Let us give you an understanding of the beasts of your planet, and then you can ask that question to yourself again, and you'll immediately know the answer. Okay. The only difference between the human and the cat or the dog or any of the beasts that is really worth mentioning is that man has more facility to, with his intellect, sort through the data and come to more defined personal conclusions of desire. You can see that you're sifting and thinking and concluding in a more deliberate way or in a more precise way than the beast that lives with you. Mm-hmm. But the beast is more in vibrational alignment with what he's asking for. So the beast asks for less than man does, but is in total alignment, especially the beasts in the wild, and therefore is living a happier life than most humans. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is be a combination of both. You want to be the thinker that you can be as this brilliant humor, and the allower that you can be as this beast that expects well-being to be. In other words, a bridging of both is the best of all worlds. So now you say, if I had all the choices in the world, in my wanting something that I cannot achieve, wouldn't I rather be my cat who is asking for little and at one with it all? Would I rather be the contented cat or the frustrated human? And we say, well, you might, in your huge frustration, you might rather be the contented cat. But when you are a human in alignment with what you want, you would always choose to be the human, you see. Yeah.